It is a Tuesday evening in July. You have just drained the potatoes. The steam is still rolling off the pot, the kitchen is hot, and on the way back from the sink, you glance out at the driveway and see it again. That same tuft of weeds pushing up through the crack by the tire line. You killed it last summer. You killed it the summer before that. Both times you drove to the hardware store, stood in front of the shelf, and picked up a gallon jug with a trigger sprayer. $18.49 for the Roundup. $35.96 if you reach for the year-long formula that was supposed to stop them for good. And here they are again. Same crack, same weeds, same trip to the store calling your name. That is how it works now. The crack greens up. You buy the bottle, you spray it. The weeds die, the crack stays open, the dust and grit pack back in, a seed lands. And by next July, you are standing in the same aisle, reaching for the same jug, spending the same $18 to $36 you spent last year. The weeds are not the expensive part. The habit is. There is a way the old folks handled this that costs nothing, uses what you already have in that pot, and takes about 2 minutes on a summer evening. And the reason you were never taught it is the plainest reason there is. Nobody makes a dime teaching you to use the heat you already paid to make for supper. There is a great deal of money in selling you another bottle. So the bottle is what you learned, and the kettle stayed quiet. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what that leftover boiling water does to a driveway weed, exactly how to use it, what it costs, which is nothing, and the $6 step that actually stops them from coming back. You will also know where this does not work, because I am not here to sell you a miracle. I am here to hand you a method your grandmother would have recognized and show you the math. I want to be straight with you before I go any further. There is a lot of talk on the internet right now about using leftover pasta water or potato water to permanently destroy deep-rooted driveway weeds in one pour. Some of that is true, a good deal of it is not. And the part that is not true is the part that will have you disappointed in a week and right back in the product aisle spending another $18 to $36. So here is what I am going to do in this video. I am going to show you what boiling water actually does to a weed and what it does not do. I am going to show you the one detail most people get wrong when they pour it. I am going to show you why the leftover starchy water from your supper is worth using, but is not the miracle the videos claim. And then I am going to show you the part nobody talks about, the part that actually stops the weeds from coming back, and it has nothing to do with any liquid you pour. By the end of this, you will know exactly what to do with that pot of water tonight, what it will cost you, which is nothing, and what the real long-term fix costs, which is about $6.50 and a screwdriver. And you will know when this works strong and when it does not work at all, because I am not here to sell you a miracle. I am here to hand you a method and show you the math. Now, let me tell you who I am and why I bother with this. My name is Hal Perkins. I am 74 years old. I have been a mechanic and a handyman in rural Missouri my whole working life. My mother and father came up through the worst of the Depression, and they raised us on almost nothing. They never carried a dollar of debt, and when they died, they had more put away than neighbors who earned 3 times their pay. My mother did not have a weed killer aisle. She had a kettle, a screwdriver, and the habit of getting 2 jobs out of everything before it went cold or got thrown out. She did not have a magic recipe. She had a practice, and it worked because she understood what it did and what it did not do. That is what I am passing on here, because if somebody does not say it out loud, it goes quiet with my generation, and all that is left is the product aisle. Before I show you what to do, you need to understand why this works, because the why tells you what to expect and what not to expect, and that is the difference between a real habit and a trick that lets you down. The plain reason boiling water kills a weed is heat. That is it. When water at a full boil hits plant tissue, it destroys the cells on contact. The leaves go limp almost at once. Within a day or two, everything the water touched turns brown and dies. Extension researchers at Iowa State describe it plainly. Boiling water acts as a contact herbicide. That word, contact, is the one you need to remember, because it tells you the whole truth about what this method can and cannot do. A contact herbicide kills what it touches. It does not travel down through the soil and chase the root to the bottom. It does not sterilize the ground permanently. It does not prevent new seeds from sprouting next month. What it does is destroy the green growth above ground and whatever shallow tissue the hot water reaches before it cools. For a small, newly sprouted annual weed sitting in a driveway crack, that is usually enough. The whole plant is right there at the surface, and a single pour of boiling water wipes it out. For an established perennial with a deep taproot, a dandelion that has been in that crack for 2 seasons, or a woody volunteer, the top burns off but the root can survive and send up new growth. Iowa State says retreatment in 7 to 10 days is common for established weeds. That is not failure. That is the method working within its honest limits. Now, what about the starchy water? There is a Colorado State Extension tip that mentions using leftover pasta or potato water and attributes part of the effect to the starch. That is a real reference and a real folk extension strand, and it gives you an honest reason to use the water you already cooked with instead of pouring it down the drain. But the stronger, more detailed extension research on boiling water weed control does not lean on starch as the main mechanism. The main mechanism is heat. The starch may add a mild smothering or coating effect, but do not build your expectations on it. I would call the starchy water advantage mild, maybe folk adjacent. Cheap to use, nothing to lose, but the boiling temperature is doing the real work. Salt is a real factor, and I will address it plainly. If you salted your pasta water in the normal cooking way, that salt is already in the pot, and salt is genuinely phytotoxic. It has been used against vegetation for centuries. But extension warnings from Illinois and Washington State are equally clear. Salt moves in soil. It does not stay where you put it. It can spread to nearby garden beds or lawn edges and injure plants you care about. So in a driveway crack with nothing desirable within a few feet, your normal cooking salted water is fine, but do not go dumping extra salt thinking more is better and more permanent. Salt is not the hero of this method. Heat and maintenance are the heroes. The real reveal, and the part that separates this from every other pour something on it video, is this. The old money habit was never about finding a free permanent herbicide. It was about not wasting hot water and not leaving an open crack where soil and seed keep collecting. Illinois Extension points out that weeds can live in pavement cracks as long as they have soil, water, and light. University pavement research says crack sealing works precisely because it keeps water and loose material out. That is the prevention logic. Kill the weed with heat you already made. Clean the crack, close the crack. That is the whole method, and the closing is where the permanent part actually lives. If this is the kind of plain teaching that keeps real money in your pocket, hit subscribe. I put one of these out every week, a different household expense, the same honest approach, the same figures on the pad. That is all I will say about it. Let us get to work. Here's exactly what you need, what it costs, and what to do with it. For the treatment itself, you need leftover boiling water from cooking, potato water, pasta water, whatever you boiled for supper. The marginal cost is zero because you already made it. If the water was salted in the normal cooking way, that salt is already in the pot. For perspective, a 26-ounce canister of table salt runs about 94 cents, so the salt in 1 pot of pasta water is a few pennies at most. You may want a pair of work gloves if you are cautious around a hot kettle, and a basic pair runs about $4.99. For the prevention step, which is where the real long-term result lives, you need a tube of concrete crack repair. A 10-ounce tube of Quikrete runs $6.47 at the hardware store. Now write this down. Your comparison spend, the thing this replaces, is a gallon of Roundup weed and grass killer at $18.49 or Ortho Ground Clear year-long vegetation killer at about $35.96. And those are per bottle prices for something you will buy again. Step 1. Pick the right weeds and the right place. This method is for isolated weeds in hardscape cracks. Driveway joints, patio seams, sidewalk edges, fence line gravel, any spot where nothing you care about is growing nearby. Iowa State specifically points to cracks in patios and sidewalks as the sweet spot for boiling water. Do not use this on your lawn. Do not use it in a garden bed. Do not pour it near the base of a tree or a prized shrub with shallow roots. The old way rule is simple. Use the kettle where you would not mind that patch being bare. Step 2. Time it for early small growth. Do not wait until the crack has grown a mature dandelion with a taproot as long as your finger or a woody volunteer sapling. Every bit of weed management guidance says the same thing. Early control is easier than late control. Iowa State says boiling water is most effective on young, newly emerged annual weeds. So the rhythm I want you to learn is this. Hit them when they are small enough to embarrass, not big enough to argue with. A weed the size of your thumbnail in a driveway crack is fair game for one pour. A weed the size of your fist is going to fight you. Step 3. Use the leftover water while it is still truly boiling hot. The frugal move is not to boil a special pot for weeds. The better way, and the old way, is that you are already cooking supper, and the hot water still has one more job in it before it goes cold. For safety, and this matters, use a tea kettle or a spouted vessel. Iowa State recommends this specifically. Do not carry a full, sloshing stock pot across concrete in flip-flops. Wear closed shoes. Walk slowly. Have a clear path from the stove to the driveway. The water is at 212 degrees. Respect it the way you would respect any tool that can hurt you. Step 4. Pour on the crown, not just the leaves. This is the one detail most people get wrong, and it is the difference between a weed that dies and a weed that wilts for a day and comes right back. Aim at the crown of the weed. That is the point where the stem meets the root right at the surface of the crack, and pour enough water to fully drench the weed and the immediate crack opening around it. You are not misting the foliage. You are sending lethal heat into the tissue where the plant actually lives and emerges. For a thick crown sitting in a driveway seam, a second slow pour is reasonable. You should see the leaves go limp almost immediately, and within a day or two, everything the water touched will be brown and dead. Step 5. Judge the result honestly. If it was a tiny annual, a little sprout of crabgrass, or a seedling that just pushed through the crack, this may be the end of it. One pour, done. If it was an established perennial, something with a real root system below the surface, expect it to resprout. Iowa State says that is normal and recommends retreatment after 7 to 10 days. Here is what I want you to understand, because this is where the internet gets people in trouble. If the weed comes back, that does not mean the method failed. It means you hit a weed with a real root under it, and hot water is not a systemic herbicide. It never was. Pour again when the regrowth is small, and you will weaken that root a little more each time. Step 6, and this is where the video stops being another pour something on it tip and becomes a real household practice. After the weed has browned and loosened, get in there with a flathead screwdriver or an old butter knife and scrape out the dead crown, whatever roots you can reach, and all the dusty organic trash packed into the seam. Illinois Extension makes the point plainly. Weeds survive in pavement cracks because the cracks become tiny habitats, full of soil and grit and moisture. If you kill the weed but leave that little nursery bed in place, you are inviting the next weed to move in just as soon as a seed blows by. This is a 2-minute screwdriver and broom step, no fancy tool required, and it is the most overlooked piece of the whole practice. Step 7. Seal the crack. This is the strongest long-term prevention beat in the entire method, and it is the one nobody on the internet talks about because it is not dramatic and it does not go viral. After the crack is dry and cleaned out, fill it. University pavement research says crack sealing works by keeping water and incompressible materials out of the crack. For the homeowner, the practical translation is simple. Less moisture in the crack means less habitat for weeds, less packed grit turning into potting soil, less freeze and thaw damage widening the crack over winter, and less repeat work for you. A tube of Quikrete concrete repair at $6.47 does more for stopping weeds for good than any fairy tale about pasta starch permanently sterilizing a taproot. That tube is the honest answer to the title of this video. Step 8. Where salt fits and where it absolutely does not. If the water was already salted from cooking, that is within the spirit of the method, and I would not worry about it in a driveway crack. But do not teach yourself the habit of dumping extra salt on your hardscape as a weed prevention strategy. Illinois Extension warns that salt is mobile in soil and can spread damage to plants you did not intend to harm. Washington State Extension says the same. Routine salt use can cause collateral damage without delivering the dependable long-term control people expect. So the safest position is this. Salt is a passenger in this method, not the driver. Heat and maintenance are the drivers. Now let me say something plain about the wrong way, because there is a lot of bad advice on this one. 3 things to debunk. First, the claim that boiling pasta water permanently kills deep roots forever in one pour. That is overstated. It kills the top growth on contact. Deep roots can survive and resprout. Honest and true. Second, the idea that more salt equals better, permanent control. That is the kind of advice that damages soil and still often needs repeats. Third, the notion that you should just keep buying a year-long bottle every season. That is not a frugal first move when the real issue is an open crack that keeps collecting seed and dust. If the crack stays open, the weeds keep coming whether you pour chemicals or hot water or anything else. Now let me tell you where this came from, and I want to be honest about it, because honest is the only thing worth being. Salt-based vegetation burn is ancient. People have used salt against unwanted growth for centuries, and that is documented. Synthetic herbicides are modern by comparison. The chemical 2,4-D arrived in the mid-1940s, and after the war, the product aisle as we know it started filling up. Before that, people managed weeds the way they managed most things, with labor, heat, scraping, hoeing, and whatever useful leftovers they had, applied in the spot where nothing else ought to grow. What I will not tell you is that Depression-era families had some secret scientific formula involving potato starch that permanently sterilized driveway cracks. That is too neat, and it is not true. What is true is that the folks who lived through lean years did not throw away useful heat and then go buy a specialty product. They reused what was hot, what was left, and what still had work in it. That is the lineage. You are not learning a new trick. You are recovering an old practice, and the practice works because of the principle. Do not waste what still has a job in it, and fix the condition that keeps calling the problem back. Here is the rhythm that keeps this saving compounding. When you cook potatoes or pasta and you notice fresh seedlings pushing through the driveway, give the hot water its second job before it cools. That is the treatment rhythm, and it costs you nothing. Once a month, sweep and scrape the seams so dust and organic grit do not pack down and turn into potting soil. That takes 5 minutes with a broom and a screwdriver. Once or twice a season, walk the driveway and seal any crack that is beginning to open up. Colorado State frames weed management as integrated and prevention first, and Illinois reminds us those cracks only host weeds because they become tiny habitats. So the compounding habit is plain: tonight, kill; this week, clean; this month, seal; this season, stay ahead of seedlings. Now I want to be honest about what this does and what it does not do, because that is what earns the right to call it a real method. Strong. Boiling water on small, newly emerged weeds in hardscape cracks. That is the sweet spot, and extension research supports it clearly. Moderate. Repeat boiling water treatment on established weeds where you get good top kill, but the roots may survive and need a second or third pour. Mild, and I would call it folk adjacent. The claim that potato or pasta starch materially outperforms plain boiling water. Use the starchy water because you have it and it costs nothing, but do not build expectations on the starch. Strong as prevention, removing debris from cracks and sealing them so weeds have less habitat and the pavement takes less weathering. That is where the real long-term result lives. Where it fails, deep perennial taproots that have been established for years, woody weeds, sprawling infestations that have taken over a large area, and any site where desirable plants are growing close by. Boiling water does not care what it hits, it kills everything. When to call a professional when the weed problem is really a pavement problem. Widening cracks, heaving slabs, drainage failure, repeated structural breakdown. Those are not weed issues. Those are concrete or asphalt issues. And a tube of crack filler is not the answer. Call someone who does it for a living. Safety, and I am going to be plain about this because boiling water can hurt you badly. 212 degrees will burn your skin on contact. Iowa State specifically warns against splashing and recommends a spouted vessel for precise pouring. Wear closed shoes. Walk slowly. Keep children and pets away from the pour area. If you are unsteady on your feet, have someone help you carry the kettle, or let the water cool for just a minute, understanding it will be slightly less effective. A good pour from a tea kettle with a clear path is safe. A sloshing stock pot carried in a hurry across a driveway is an emergency room visit. Boiling water is non-selective. It will injure or kill any plant it touches, including the grass at the edge of your driveway or the ground cover next to your patio. Pour where you want bare ground and nowhere else. Salt, as I said, should stay off garden soil and lawn edges because it moves and it accumulates. If you are comparing this to bottled herbicides and someone asks about safety, the defensible line is this. Some product labels carry environmental hazard language and specific directions about use near wells and before rain. Read and follow the label. I am not going to call any particular bottle carcinogenic, because that is not my job. My job is to show you the cheap first thing to try and be straight about what it does. Now I want to take a moment because here is where it all comes together. Look at what we have walked through. You have a method that uses water you already boiled for supper at a cost of $0. You pour it on the crown of the weed in the crack while it is still hot enough to matter. You wait for the brown down. Then you scrape out the dead material and the grit packed in the seam. You seal the crack with a $6 tube of concrete repair. And if the weed had a deep root and it comes back, you pour again in a week and weaken it further. The treatment costs nothing. The prevention costs $6.47. The habit costs you 5 minutes a month with a broom. The honest math is plain. Write this down. The immediate treatment, leftover boiling water from cooking, $0. If you count the salt already in a pot of pasta water, call it 2 or 3 cents from a 94-cent canister. Optional work gloves, $4.99. One tube of quick-rete concrete repair for crack sealing, $6.47. The full old way first pass, kill it, clean it, and close it with gloves comes to about $11.46, and the recurring cost of the treatment alone, the boiling water from the next pot of supper, is zero. Against that, 1 gallon of Roundup weed and grass killer is $18.49. 1 gallon of Ortho Ground Clear year-long vegetation killer is about $35.96. And those are bottles you buy again because neither one seals the crack. The crack stays open, the grit collects, the seed lands, and the weed comes back, and you buy another bottle. Even the fuller old way version, with gloves and a tube of repair, undercuts a single purchased bottle. And the true recurring cost of the leftover water treatment is nothing, because you were making supper anyway. There is no money in teaching a man to use the heat he already made, pull the dead weed, and seal the crack. There is a great deal of money in selling him a bottle every time the crack greens up, and that is the plain reason this never made it to the product aisle. It is not a conspiracy. It is a system nobody had to coordinate. Modern synthetic herbicides entered the picture after the war, and today the shelf is full of convenient, ready-to-use products at $18 to $36 a bottle, priced for people who would rather buy than learn. Comfort rose, old habits faded, and the bottle replaced the kettle and the screwdriver. You can be the one who never paid. This was never really about a driveway weed. It is about whether your home depends on a fresh purchase for every small irritation, or whether you are the kind of person who gets 2 uses out of what is already in hand and then fixes the condition that keeps calling the problem back. The first kind of house keeps a shelf of bottles. The second kind of house keeps a screwdriver, a broom, and the habit of paying attention. The old folks did not have a fancy label for that. They just called it taking care of the place. Here is what I want you to do. Tonight, walk out and look at the 3 worst cracks in your driveway or your sidewalk. Decide which ones are truly isolated hardscape with no grass or garden nearby. This week, the next time you boil potatoes or pasta, take the hot water out while it is still at a full boil and pour it on those small crack weeds right on the crown, slow and steady. Then wait a day or two for the brown down. Scrape out the dead material and the packed grit. This month, after the cracks are dry and clean, fill them with a tube of concrete repair. This season, make it a habit. Catch seedlings when they first show instead of waiting until they are big enough to argue with. Your recurring cost is zero. Your upfront investment is about $11 and a little attention. Your savings start the day you do not pick up another bottle. Now, before I let you go, I want to hear 2 things from you. First, what is the household job you are most tired of buying a bottle for? I want to know, because those are the ones worth doing a video on. Second, if your mother, your father, your granddad, or anybody in your family had an old hardscape or yard trick for keeping a place tidy without buying another product, write it down in the comments. Those little inherited methods disappear when nobody says them out loud, and I read every single one. If you are not subscribed, hit that button. Next time, same principle, different problem, same low-cost prevention, the old cheap way to stop ants or wasps around the shop without turning the whole place into a chemistry set. Until then, use the water while it is still hot enough to matter, clean the crack, close the crack, and stop buying a bottle for a problem, a screwdriver, and a kettle handle for free. That is how the careful old folks got by without owing anybody a dime. That is how it is still done in any home that remembers.